is going through everything he's going through, but it hurts me so bad.
I told Gribble to stab her just to be sure.
It is the burden of the government to provide you with truthful, honest, sworn testimony.
A Tampa man, Stuart Cobb, has admitted to being responsible for a fatal hit-and-run. He pleaded guilty to driving under the influence and causing the death of a pedestrian 2 years ago. By accepting responsibility, Cobb chose to forego a trial and instead entered a guilty plea. His future now lies in the hands of a judge, as he was prepared to resolve his case.
Raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, could you state your name for the record?
Stuart Cobb.
2 years ago, prosecutors reported that Cobb was driving under the influence on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Williams Road in Tampa when he hit and killed a pedestrian standing on the side of the road. Instead of stopping, he continued driving. They explained that Cobb parked his vehicle at a nearby Walmart and proceeded to do something unexpected.
Defendant Mr. Cobb returned to the scene about 30 minutes or so, 30 or 40 minutes after the crash.
During the investigation at the crime scene, there was a close call for troopers. Dashcam footage reveals another driver almost hitting 2 Florida Highway Patrol troopers on the roadside. That driver was also arrested. As for Cobb, authorities say he confessed to the hit-and-run crash, and now, 2 years later, he has decided to make a deal with the state. In exchange for his guilty plea, the state has agreed to drop one of the charges.
Judge, he's going to enter a guilty plea, acknowledging his guilt, but open to the court.
It's an open plea, meaning the judge will determine his fate. His sentencing is scheduled for this spring.
Yes, sir.
His sentencing date is set for April 1st, marking a significant moment in the case as the court prepares to deliver a final judgment. The hearing is expected to include not only legal arguments, but also powerful and emotional testimony from the victim's family, who will have the opportunity to share the impact of the crime on their lives. The prosecution dropped a bombshell by projecting handwriting almost childlike onto the screen. The writing was identified by an inmate who had turned state's witness. Unapologetically, he admitted to the court that he had intentionally encouraged Spader to produce those writings, all with the hidden motive of using them to secure an early release from jail.
Ms. Lynette Pisecki.
The jury heard from Kimberly Cates' mother in an emotional and brief testimony. She identified a piece of jewelry that, according to the state, Steven Spader had stolen from Fort Trow Road on October 4th, 2009.
The bracelet that Kim bought me several years ago. And I sent it home with her last summer to save it for Jamie.
For 8 days, Spader maintained a consistent and unresponsive demeanor. However, his composure noticeably softened when his former girlfriend, 18-year-old Jillian Baptist, took the stand. She testified that she was dating Spader at the time of the alleged killing.
I asked him if it was true that he was involved in a murder. He said that he didn't want to discuss it over the phone because his phone calls could be tracked.
Jillian handed over a letter to the state, which she claimed Spader had mailed to her from jail. She then read the contents aloud to the jury.
By the time you get this letter, the news will probably have hyped again, and you shall hear and see some pretty unflattering things about me.
It was the final witness of the day, and perhaps the most devastating one for Spader. Chad Landry, an inmate housed next to Spader last fall, revealed he had received notes that Spader allegedly wrote. According to Landry, these notes describe in chilling detail how Spader, Gribble, Marks, and Glover committed the horrific acts they are accused of at the Cates home. His testimony once again moved Mr. Cates and others to tears.
I told Gribble to stab her just to be sure. He did. During this time, Quinn and Billy stood at the entrance to the room and watched.
It was a tough way to close out a day at Superior Court. Everyone in the courtroom appeared exhausted and worn out. The jury remained focused, but signs of fatigue were evident. Suspect Billy Marks took the stand again for cross-examination, where the defense aimed to portray him as a liar, attempting to shift the blame onto his co-defendants in the case.
You were in that room that night, that master bedroom?
Yes.
And you did a lot more than you're telling us, didn't you, Billy?
No.
You were lying when you said you didn't.
No.
You were lying when you said you didn't attack Kimberly Cates.
No.
You were lying when you said you didn't attack Jamie Cates.
No.
In a brief redirect, the prosecution revisited Marks's earlier statements to reinforce the credibility and consistency of his testimony. They asked if he harbored any doubts about the truthfulness or accuracy of the testimony he had provided throughout the trial. Marks, maintaining his composure, confidently affirmed that he had no doubts, further solidifying his position as a credible witness in the eyes of the jury and the court. A dramatic new video has emerged showing a dangerous high-speed chase that ended tragically with a woman's death. Captured on a deputy's dash cam, the footage reveals the intense pursuit as officers tried to catch Garyon Simmons. Unfortunately, they were unable to stop him before the chase ended in fatal consequences. Inside the courtroom, emotions ran high as Simmons faced the victim's grieving family.
I've been crying. I have not stopped.
For those anxiously waiting outside the courtroom in Rutherford County.
And living it over and over and over this past month.
It's been an incredibly difficult couple of weeks. Once inside, they came face to face with Garyon Simmons, the man accused of killing their loved one, 28-year-old Jessica Campos.
His vehicle approached that congested area, found a gap in the traffic, crossed over from the right shoulder to the left.
The multi-county high-speed chase reached a shocking conclusion, with dramatic dashcam footage being shown publicly for the first time. The video revealed Simmons leading deputies at over 90 miles per hour, at times dangerously swerving into oncoming traffic. The courtroom watched as Simmons maneuvered through stopped vehicles moments before colliding with his first victim.
You were on South Church Street. Do you remember the impact at all?
No, sir.
Katrina Sadler didn't regain consciousness until she arrived at the hospital. Even now, she still relies on a walker to get around.
We're all human, but I just wish it wouldn't have happened.
Well, he took my daughter's life, but he'd like to take Miss Sanders' life too.
Jessica Campos's aunt couldn't bring herself to watch as the video showed the devastating moment when Simmons crashed into Campos's car in Murfreesboro. Campos leaves behind her son and daughter, who now mourn her loss.
He's took everything from me. He's took a mother. Her little boy cries for his mother every night. The sound of the crash and before that and everything, it was pretty like going through it with her.
The case is now being moved to a higher court, but Jessica Campos's aunt remains unconvinced by Simmons' defense.
He said the reason he didn't stop because he was scared of the cops, of the officer killing him. But he wasn't scared to steal the SUV, was he, out of the funeral home?
Simmons was charged with vehicular homicide, 4 counts of aggravated assault, evading arrest, driving on a revoked license, 2 counts of being a habitual motor vehicle offender, and violation of probation. In their closing argument, the state prosecutor emphasized proving that the defendant, Yuri Jenkins, had arranged for a hitman to murder his 33-year-old pregnant wife, Makiva Jenkins.
He was there to complete the job that the defendant asked him to do. And he either received $1,500 or $10,000, and he was promised additional money.
Although Yuri Jenkins didn't pull the trigger himself, the state argued that he was the mastermind behind the shooting, driven by a desire to claim his wife's life insurance money.
That the one policy was changed, and he assumed that the second policy had been changed also.
In June 2017, Makiva Jenkins was murdered while she slept at her home near Lantana. The prosecution's key witnesses, confessed gunman Jovan Joseph and alleged middleman Dimitri Dale, testified against Jenkins in hopes of avoiding life sentences.
This case is about lies and liars. Plain and simple.
During the defense's closing arguments, Jenkins's attorney challenged the credibility of the witnesses, highlighting inconsistencies in their stories and reminding the jury of their history of lying under oath. He argued that Jenkins had no involvement in his wife's murder and that the state had failed to provide sufficient proof to the contrary.
It is the burden of the government to provide you with truthful, honest, sworn testimony.
Jurors deliberated for approximately 2 hours, carefully reviewing the evidence and arguments presented during the trial. Despite their efforts, they could not reach a consensus by the end of the day. Deciding to reconvene with fresh perspectives, the jurors agreed to return on Friday to continue their discussions. troopers report that Lizea Rivera is now facing multiple charges, including murder and DUI manslaughter. The charges are connected to an incident in which a 39-year-old man lost his life after being struck by Rivera's red SUV. Rivera is currently attempting to post bond. According to the arrest report, troopers discovered bottles of alcohol in her vehicle and noted the smell of marijuana inside. Additionally, they revealed that Rivera was driving with a suspended license.
I have my public defender with me here today.
22-year-old Lizea Rivera appeared before a judge after troopers reported that she ran over 39-year-old Nostaki Exantis on Orange Blossom Trail early morning. Authorities say she was driving with a suspended license and was under the influence. The judge granted her bond during the hearing.
DUI caused death to human. That's an F2. State would ask for a $15,000 bond as to count 2.
Troopers say that a black Lexus was spotted on the same stretch of road shortly after the crash, taking the life of a Good Samaritan and injuring 3 others who had stopped to assist Exantis. The car then sped away without stopping. Investigators hope this video will lead to the driver's identification and shed light on the 2 fatal crashes. If anyone recognizes the vehicle or spots it on the streets, they are urged to contact the Florida Highway Patrol. A man accused of driving drunk in a deadly crash involving an Uber faced a judge in Miami. The collision took place just 2 days after Christmas in Southwest Miami-Dade and claimed the life of one of the passengers. The victim's family has filed a lawsuit against the ride-sharing company, alleging negligence on the part of the Uber driver. However, police and prosecutors have taken a different stance, choosing not to charge the Uber driver. Instead, they arrested the man who struck the Uber while speeding and driving under the influence. The young man had a bond hearing where he was granted bond, but not before confronting some serious questions.
You were arrested for DUI manslaughter, DUI causing serious bodily injury to another, and vehicular homicide.
The crash scene was devastating and claimed the life of 20-year-old college student Pablo Sanchez, Jr. He was in an Uber with 3 others just 2 mornings after Christmas when the vehicle was making a left turn in front of 20-year-old Alexander Chica, who, according to prosecutors, has confessed.
He was going twice the legal limit, plowing into this car. It was his speed that caused a GMC Yukon to flip over it on its side after rotating counterclockwise and hitting a wall.
Chica's family and supporters from his high school alma mater gathered at his bond hearing to show their support. Initially, he was held without bond due to a post he posted before his arrest, which read, "A little Columbia run coming soon." Prosecutors were concerned that he anticipated his toxicology results would reveal he was intoxicated and had plans to flee to his family.
He's not the type of kid, neither is his family, the type of people that are going to flee from a situation or from a problem.
The attorney explained that the tweet referred to traveling for a soccer game in Colombia and even presented the game tickets as evidence.
This is a tragedy, I think, for every family involved.
Alexander Chica was granted a bond set at $25,000, and it is expected that he will be able to post it. As part of the conditions, he must wear an ankle monitoring bracelet and has had to surrender his passport. It was one of the deadliest mass killings in Tennessee's history. 8 people murdered in April 2019. Nearly 4 years later, the case has yet to go to trial. However, we gained some insight into the mind of Michael Cummins, the accused killer. Among his alleged victims were his own parents. The court hearing was held to determine whether Cummins would face the death penalty, with much of the session focused on evaluating his mental state. Throughout the hearing, Michael Cummins, seen in the courtroom, was constantly rocking and shaking. The discussion centered on whether his mental and intellectual condition meets the criteria for an intellectual disability, with Dr. Mary Elizabeth Wood examining his history, which includes documented neglect and deprivation as outlined in DCS records.
There was concerns about him and his sister, multiple lice infections, infestations, sort of the home didn't have electricity or running water at times. There were occasions where there wasn't a front door or there weren't doors on the inside of the home. There were allegations of abuse that were made at various times. There were allegations that his father was drinking excessively and may have been giving the children beer. There was one allegation I saw about methamphetamine being manufactured in the home. I don't believe that was founded or not investigated. But these records really document these concerns over time about what is happening in the home environment.
This testimony is crucial in determining whether Cummins is eligible for execution, as it directly impacts the jury's decision regarding his mental state, guilt, and the application of the death penalty. His trial, which will address the evidence against him and mitigating factors, is scheduled to begin in April, marking a critical phase in the legal proceedings. The Tennessee Supreme Court has overturned the death sentence handed to Jerry Ray Davidson nearly 20 years ago by a Dickson County jury. The High Court ruled that the jury should have been provided with more information about Davidson's mental health. The victim's family is expressing their thoughts on the decision.
She grew up not far from me. We rode on the school bus together.
Former State Senator Doug Jackson, cousin of Virginia Jackson, has expressed his thoughts following the Tennessee Supreme Court's decision to overturn the death sentence of her killer, Jerry Ray Davidson. The court ruled that the jury, which sentenced Davidson over 17 years ago, should have been provided with more information regarding his mental health.
For now, for this defect in the process to appear, I think is very disheartening for everyone related to Jenny, that cared about Jenny.
Virginia Jackson was last seen on the night of September 26, 1995, at a bar near Dickson. As closing time approached, she accepted a ride home from Jerry Ray Davidson, a known convicted sex offender. Sadly, Jackson was never seen alive after that night.
We're all just like we were a few days ago, kind of in a daze, just not wanting to believe it's true.
4 weeks later, hunters discovered her body in the woods near her home. Compelling circumstantial evidence pointed to Davidson as her killer.
He was the last person seen with her, and there's some other circumstances I'd rather not go into.
2 years later, a jury found Davidson guilty and sentenced him to death. However, the Tennessee Supreme Court later overturned the death sentence, citing that Davidson's attorney had failed to present any evidence of his mental illness, despite having a clear obligation to do so.
I wish there was more empathy directed toward the victims' families, that the court would act more expeditiously and accurately. If there's a problem, determine it quickly and address that problem quickly.
Now, the Jackson family will have to relive the painful memories they thought were behind them. The new sentencing hearing will likely involve a jury, and new lawyers will take on the case. It could take up to a year for these lawyers to fully prepare for the proceedings. At the time of his cousin Virginia Jackson's murder, Doug Jackson was serving as a representative in the Tennessee House. In response to her tragic death, he sponsored legislation that made the state sex offender registry accessible to the public. Police have arrested following a fatal crash that occurred in Sunrise back in November, just a block from Sawgrass Mills. The driver involved now faces several serious charges, including DUI and manslaughter. Although the incident happened a couple of months ago, she is now in custody, facing the consequences. Authorities report that 2 hours after the crash, her blood alcohol content was nearly twice the legal limit.
So, Ms. Bell, you have been arrested for one count of DUI manslaughter, another count of DUI manslaughter, one count of vehicular homicide.
33-year-old Emily Bell is now facing multiple charges after allegedly driving under the influence and causing a crash that claimed the life of a man from Coral Springs. According to her arrest report, Bell and a friend had been drinking at CJ Black's restaurant and bar in Davie on November 18th. Authorities state that afterward, they went to the boatyard in Fort Lauderdale, where they continued drinking and then returned to CJ Black's for even more alcohol.
In total, throughout the night, she ordered 7 shots of tequila. Her blood alcohol level was 0.149, almost 4 hours after the crash.
Bell and her friend then got into her Lexus SUV. Around 11:30 p.m., they collided with a Nissan Altima that was stopped at the intersection of Northwest 136th Avenue and Sunrise Boulevard, resulting in the tragic death of the man inside the Altima.
The black box in the defendant's vehicle revealed that 5 seconds before the crash, she was traveling at 84.5 miles per hour. And at 2 seconds before the crash, she was at top speed of 85.1 miles per hour in the 45 miles.
Bell and her friend were transported to the hospital with minor injuries. Now, nearly 2 months later, Bell is in custody, facing serious charges. Her bond has been set at over $150,000, and if she manages to post it, as it seems she will be required to wear a GPS monitor. Additionally, she is restricted from leaving Broward County and is prohibited from driving. The woman accused of causing the death of a girl in a DUI crash appeared in Fayette District Court. During the hearing, a witness provided new details about the tragic events of that night. At the preliminary hearing for 24-year-old Sequoia Collins, a Lexington police officer took the stand to share his testimony. He described his conversations with witnesses at the scene and revealed what was found in Collins's blood system after the crash. According to police, in July, Collins was driving approximately 85 miles per hour when she ran a red light and collided with another vehicle at the intersection of Tates Creek Road and Lansdowne Drive, leading to the death of Alexia Gomez Hernandez. The officer testified that a blood test conducted about 4 hours after the crash showed Collins had a blood alcohol level of 0.211, and cocaine was also detected in her system.
Due to the totality of these factors, we believed and had a meeting with the Commonwealth Attorney that this showed the extreme indifference to the value of human life.
Collins faced charges of murder, wanton endangerment, and assault. During the hearing, her lawyer requested that the judge reduce the murder charge to manslaughter, but the judge denied the request. The case is now being forwarded to the grand jury. Additionally, the officer revealed that the driver of the vehicle Collins struck did not have a valid license and had also been drinking on the night of the crash. Taylor Schabusiness, a 25-year-old resident of Green Bay, Wisconsin, became the focus of a highly publicized criminal case. The events unfolded on February 22, 2022, when the remains of Shad Therian, a 24-year-old acquaintance of Schabusiness, were found in his mother's basement. Law enforcement discovered evidence indicating that Therian had tragically lost his life under deeply troubling circumstances. Investigators learned that Schabusiness and Therian had been together prior to the incident, during which they used substances that may have influenced their behavior. During their time together, Schabusiness admitted to causing harm to Therian, resulting in his death. Following the incident, she attempted to conceal the evidence, leading to the discovery of disorganized remains in the basement. Schabusiness was arrested and subsequently charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. Her legal team pursued an insanity defense, claiming mental health issues impaired her judgment. However, the prosecution contended that her actions reflected deliberate intent.
But quite frankly, as far as this incident and these events go, I think I've spoken to this already in prior hearings, but the fact of the matter is, when I watched the interview with law enforcement shortly after these events, I observed someone who was lucid, understanding what was going on, was tracking what was being asked of her, answers were tracking. Everything seemed to be together at that moment. I don't really see the influence of drugs now. It doesn't mean it's not there, but I didn't see it in that interview, which is the most close proximity to the events of this night that we have, is that interview. And right then and there, she seemed to be very lucid in what she was doing.
In July 2023, after a brief jury deliberation, Schabusiness was convicted on all charges. Testimonies during the trial presented conflicting perspectives on her mental state, but the jury concluded she did not meet the criteria for insanity.
In this case, when I consider the defendant's character, I can say that over the course of this case, I've learned a great deal about you, Ms. Schabusiness. First of all, you were born in Chicago, lived there until you were about age 10, or 12 rather. You seem to have had a stable childhood. You were loved by your mother and your father and your brother. And unfortunately, your mother passed away when you were 12, your brother passed away in a vehicle accident, and your dad's incarcerated. But I'm confident that all three of them probably still love you very much. Her father's employment was transferred to Green Bay when she was about 12 years old, and hence began the contact Ms. Schabusiness had with this community. She attended Bayport High School. At about 16, she moved to Texas to live with her grandfather. She graduated from high school in Cotulla, Texas, and eventually came back to Green Bay because she missed her father and her brother, which again doesn't surprise me any because, as I've indicated, I think they both love her very much. She's worked in this community. I read over the pre-sentence investigation report that I ordered, and that outlines some work experience that she has, and I think that's a favorable character trait because, quite frankly, not everyone that lives in this community does work, and I think it indicates someone who wants to get out and support themselves and not make anybody else do it. But that reflects on character. She has a limited court record. Certainly we have pretty much the entire extent of her criminal record in front of us here today. But it's a limited record that reflects on character. She's got a family who cares about her. And although sometimes I think people take that for granted.
The court proceedings for Taylor Schabusiness concluded with a detailed analysis of her background, character, and the severity of her actions. The judge outlined her early life, including her upbringing in Chicago and Green Bay, highlighting the challenges she faced, such as the loss of her mother and brother and her father's incarceration. Despite these hardships, Schabusiness had a stable childhood and supportive family members who valued her. Her history included periods of stability and work in the community, but was also marred by early drug use and struggles with mental health.
I'm cognizant of the fact that she began using drugs at a very young age. Marijuana at age 12, cocaine at around 18, and methamphetamine at around 18 as well. And we've heard a lot of testimony about drug usage. I don't have any doubt that that has an impact on how people conduct their lives and behave from moment to moment. I've heard about Ms. Schabusiness's mental health history. I've read stacks and stacks of mental health records that have come in as recently as a few days ago. And I read them over, which allowed me to learn even more about Ms. Schabusiness and about her character and who she is as a person. I've heard about her son who lives in Texas. And I'm absolutely convinced that she loves her son. I'm going to say more about that in a minute, but that's a piece of who she is because she's a mom, and I think that is a title that is a precious title and it's an important title.
The court acknowledged her efforts to maintain relationships with her family, especially her son in Texas, and noted her deep love for him. These factors, while mitigating, did not excuse her actions.
In this case, you seem to run out of superlatives when describing what happened in this case. You really do. The list of superlatives don't seem to measure up to what you see and what you hear about, and what we heard about in the trial. This crime offends human decency, it offends human dignity, and it offends the human community. It really does. When someone loses their life needlessly, it's tragic. It really is. It's tragic for family and friends and community. When life is taken from a person in the fashion that it was in this case, where the victim's remains are cut up and packaged in containers, it's difficult to identify a human nature in those activities. It really is. It's very troubling.
The court underscored the need to protect the public and hold Schabusiness accountable for her actions. The judge also emphasized the heinous nature of the crime, stating, "This crime offends human decency. It offends human dignity. It offends the human community."
The severity of the offense, but at this time, given all the factors that I have to consider, it's the decision of this court and the judgment of the law that Ms. Schabusiness be sentenced as follows. As to in 22 CF 363, count 1, that's the first degree intentional homicide as a repeater. That's a Class A felony. I'm going to impose life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. I believe that's appropriate in light of the findings that I've already made. As far as count 2, mutilation of a corpse as a repeater, a Class F felony, I'm going to adopt the recommendation of the pre-sentence investigation writer, 7.5 years of initial confinement followed by 4 years of extended supervision. That'll be consecutive to count 1. As far as count 3, third degree sexual assault as a repeater, Class G felony, I'm going to impose 3 years of initial confinement followed by 4 years of extended supervision. That will be consecutive to count 2 and count 1. As far as the revocation cases, I'm going to impose 1 year of incarceration on each of those counts. Those will run concurrent to the other offenses.
In September 2023, Taylor Schabusiness was sentenced for her role in the tragic death of Shad Therian, following her conviction on charges of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. For the charge of first-degree intentional homicide, the court imposed life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, citing the deliberate and severe nature of the crime and her lack of remorse. For the mutilation of a corpse, she received 7.5 years of initial confinement and 4 years of extended supervision, to be served consecutively to the life sentence. The third-degree sexual assault charge resulted in a sentence of 3 years of initial confinement and 4 years of extended supervision, also to run consecutively to the other charges. Additionally, she was sentenced to 1 year of incarceration for each of her prior revocation cases, which will run concurrently.
I'm going to, as conditions of supervision, I'm going to require no contact with the victim's family, maintain absolute sobriety, complete SOT assessment and treatment follow-through, obtain and maintain full-time employment. To the extent there's ever supervision, GPS monitoring. I'm going to require an AOD assessment and follow-through, psychological evaluation and follow-through. The recommendations that are contained in the pre-sentence investigation report submitted by the defense indicates or suggests that there be services engaged in for substance abuse and other mental health issues. That's a reasonable suggestion. And I think I've encompassed it in the recommendations that I've made, which is there needs to be a compass evaluation and follow through with any treatment recommendations that are proposed. But again, an AODA assessment and follow through and psychological evaluation so that Ms. Schabusiness can get the help that she needs while she serves this sentence. I'm going to order court costs. It's $538 per count. That's a total of $1,614. That'll be the order of the court. I do need to indicate, as I'm required to at sentencing, that now that Ms. Schabusiness is convicted of a felony, she'll lose her right to vote until it's given back to her by the governor or by state law, and she may not possess firearm or wear body armor. Any other record you'd like me to make, Mr. Saunders?
No.
Mr. Freilich, any other record?
Your Honor, the 581 days credit for time served.
Any objection to that?
No, and there's an additional 60 days on the revocation case.
No objection to that.
581 days credit on the first case, and then on the revocation cases, 60 days credit.
Schabusiness was credited with 581 days for time already served and an additional 60 days for her revocation cases. Although her life sentence precludes release, the court outlined conditions for any hypothetical supervision, including a prohibition on contact with the victim's family, maintaining absolute sobriety, and undergoing substance abuse and psychological evaluations with mandatory follow-through. She was also ordered to pay $1,614 in court costs. And as a convicted felon, she lost her right to vote and is prohibited from possessing firearms or body armor. Byron Wiscombe, a former city councilman from Ammon, Idaho, was brought to public attention after allegations of inappropriate conduct surfaced in December 2021. The case began when a family member courageously reported that Wiscombe was molesting a girl for 7 years to the authorities. Investigators later charged him with felony lewd conduct involving a minor, felony sexual battery of a child, felony video voyeurism, and misdemeanor sexual battery. A separate misdemeanor sexual battery charge was filed in connection with an adult victim. Initially, Wiscombe pleaded not guilty to all charges, which set the stage for a lengthy legal process. However, in November 2023, a plea agreement was reached. Under the terms of this agreement, Wiscombe pleaded guilty to felony conduct with a child, while all other charges, including those tied to the adult victim, were dismissed. This agreement marked a pivotal moment in the case as it consolidated the focus of the prosecution and set the stage for sentencing.
Able to see you. I'm so sorry, and I miss you all. I'm so very sorry. I'm sorry to my wife of 23 years, all that I've put her through, that I didn't get the help, and that this happened to me. So terribly sorry. I'm sorry for the community and the concern that I caused and this good community of good people that I tried to serve. And I love good neighbors and friends. The significant damage extended to co-workers, neighbors, members of my faith. On December 1st, 2021, my family did the right thing to go to the authorities and put a stop to this. I'm sorry that I was not strong enough to do it and was compelled to be humble. They were so courageous. And I'm grateful that you did what you did. Since then, I made every effort to be responsible, honest, and accountable. I met with my church leaders to confess my wrongs. I met with my attorneys, as I was counseled to do. I met with mental and health professionals to try to better understand things about my childhood, my youth, that I'd never shared before. I asked for a psychosexual evaluation as soon as I understood what it was, which included a polygraph. In order to fully be transparent, this was in December of last year and would have happened sooner, but for the holidays. I've attended weekly addiction recovery programs for the last year, every week, calling in. That's been such a help. I haven't had contact. I've followed the rules, and I'm so grateful. I have one adult missionary son who chose to speak to me. It's been a miracle and a help to my heart. During this time, I've reflected deeply on my life and the pain that I've inflicted. I see how dishonesty and negativity led to addiction and self-righteous hypocrisy. And I was stuck. But owning all of my decisions has led to empowering change. Just as I'm being honest and taking responsibility for the choices of my past, I will be able to be responsible for the choices of my future. Today, with the ongoing help of family, many that are here today, friends, mental health professionals, ecclesiastical leaders, and ultimately giving what I cannot do. I can't undo, I can't restore. I have to give it to God through Jesus Christ. And I'm doing that, I'm changing for the better. I fully submit to the laws of the lands, the decisions of this court, and the councils of my church.
During the sentencing hearing, Wiscombe addressed the court, expressing deep remorse for his actions and apologizing to his family, the community, and those affected. He recounted his steps toward rehabilitation, which included attending weekly addiction recovery programs, consulting with mental health professionals, and undergoing a psychosexual evaluation. Despite these efforts, the court emphasized the gravity of his offenses and the harm inflicted on the victim and their family.
This court has sentenced scores and scores of individuals on sexual-related offenses, which result in a spectrum of conduct and circumstances. These often occur at the hands of strangers, perhaps family members or uncles or friends, teachers and grandfathers. In each of these situations, there is one very significant relationship removed from what occurred here. And there are degrees of harm and suffering in each one of these types of offenses. And yet you became the face of immeasurable harm. And as a result, the court will sentence you as follows, with 3 years fixed and an indeterminate period of 30 years with a unified sentence of 33 years. Restitution will be held open. The court will preserve the no contact order through the court's jurisdiction. There will be a $5,000 compensatory fine and a $15,000 fine for the offense.
District Judge Dane Watkins Jr. handed down the sentence, ordering Wiscombe to serve a unified prison term of 33 years, with a minimum of 3 years fixed and an indeterminate 30 years. Additional penalties included a $5,000 compensatory fine and a $15,000 punitive fine. The court also upheld a no-contact order with the victim and left restitution open for future determination. In his ruling, Judge Watkins acknowledged the severity of the harm caused and underscored the need for justice and accountability. In October 2005, Tara Grinstead, a beloved high school history teacher and former beauty queen in Ocilla, Georgia, mysteriously vanished. Her disappearance was reported after she failed to show up for work, sparking concern in her tight-knit community. Grinstead was last seen on October 22, 2005 at a local beauty pageant and later at an evening barbecue hosted by friends. Investigators discovered her unlocked home with her car parked outside, her cell phone charging inside, and her purse missing, but there were no signs of a struggle. These details made her absence all the more puzzling, and her case quickly became one of Georgia's most notorious unsolved mysteries. For over a decade, law enforcement pursued countless leads, conducted numerous searches, and examined potential suspects, but the case remained unsolved. It wasn't until February 2017 that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, received a shocking confession. Ryan Alexander Duke, a former student at the high school where Grinstead taught, admitted to the crime.
Okay. Tell me what happened.
I used to break into people's houses just to steal money. I was a drug addict. I've been drinking. I was high. I don't remember everything clearly.
Okay.
But I was stealing from a purse, and she snuck up on me, and I hit her. I didn't mean to. Purely reactionary, but yes, sir, she was cremated.
Okay. Let's back up. Okay. You were at the house. You broke in. You said you used a credit card to break into the house.
Yes, sir.
You were digging through her purse.
Yes, sir.
And she surprised you.
Yes, sir.
And you immediately turned around and you punched her or hit her, however you hit her.
I don't know. That's one thing I can't remember is exactly what happened.
Okay. I mean, could it be something other than a punch, or like could have been like a choking, just scared and fear? You know, that does happen. Is it possible?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, that's fine.
I know the difference, you know.
Yes, sir. Okay. So you hit her and she fell to the ground.
Yes, sir.
Was there any blood or anything?
Not that I know of. I mean, I ran as soon as it happened.
Okay. And then you said, how did you get there?
That's what I have a hard time remembering, because I've been drinking and I don't even remember getting in a car.
Ryan Alexander Duke admitted to law enforcement that he was involved in the disappearance of Tara Grinstead. He described his troubled past, including struggles with drug addiction, which led him to break into homes to steal money. On the night of the incident, he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol, which impaired his judgment. Duke explained that while searching through Grinstead's belongings, she unexpectedly confronted him. Startled, he reacted instinctively and struck her. He expressed that his actions were not premeditated, but a panicked reaction to the situation.
Do whatever afterwards. You go and you pick up her body. You put it, I'm assuming this is still in Bo's truck. And you put it in the back, or did you put it in the front seat?
Got a quilt and wrapped her up in there.
Okay. So she didn't have any clothes on when you...
Yes, sir, she had all the clothes on.
Okay. Do you know what, so everything, I mean, this is afterwards, so...
Yes, sir.
You know, you probably come down from whatever you were on.
If she did, I don't know.
Somebody did. Did Bo help you take her clothes off?
No, sir. I mean,
Okay, so you take her out to where? To cremate her?
it was a field in Fitzgerald, off of Peak.
Places where Bo and, you know, I guess he threw a party or two out there from time to time?
I was familiar with it, yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm assuming this is Saturday night now. This is late Saturday night, early Sunday morning when you lose the body.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we're rolling into, and you left her there because you didn't burn her the same day you dropped her body out there, did you?
No, sir.
And your conscience got the better of you, and you went and told Bo Sunday that you had done it, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
After you picked her up, early Sunday.
Well, that's when I called. I hadn't got her at that point.
Okay.
I had called. I was hoping she was okay. And
How did you call? What did you do?
from a payphone,
Okay.
I called that number.
Okay. Gloves. I know there were some gloves at the house. Is that going to have your DNA on it?
It should. They were mine.
Was it just accidental leaving the glove? It was pure accident?
Yes, sir. It was a day or two.
You go and get Bo, and you two go right back out there, and you told him what you had done again.
Yes, sir.
And he probably still didn't believe you, but you kind of had to prove it to him, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And get out there, and her body's still where you left it, correct?
Yes. She was out there for a couple of days.
So you pick her body up, you and Bo pick her body up, put him in your truck, in his truck, turn to the woods.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then what'd you do?
Cremated.
Get the wood from?
I don't know who stole it from.
Was there a shed out there near the pecan orchard that had some wood in it?
That was it.
After the altercation, Duke left Grinstead's home but returned shortly after, realizing the gravity of the situation. At this point, he sought assistance from his friend Bo Dukes. Duke and Bo transported Grinstead's body to a remote location in Fitzgerald, Georgia. They attempted to dispose of the evidence by burning her remains. This process extended over a couple of days as they worked to conceal their actions.
So we went back and wanted some burnt trash.
Over the same spot?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember where this spot is?
Yes, sir.
Could you take us there?
I probably could. I mean,
You haven't been back since.
no, sir.
Duke provided critical details about the crime scene, including the gloves he used and the location of the evidence. He also offered to guide law enforcement to the disposal site, further corroborating his confession. Law enforcement collected a DNA sample from Duke and reviewed additional evidence, including gloves and other items connected to the crime. Investigators confirmed that the details provided matched the evidence from the scene and corroborated Duke's account. During the confession, Duke expressed deep remorse for his actions and the impact on Grinstead's family and community. He revealed that he had been haunted by guilt and felt compelled to confess to alleviate his conscience. Following Duke's confession, he was charged with malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, burglary, and concealing a death. Bo Dukes, meanwhile, faced charges of concealing a death, evidence tampering, and making false statements. Dukes was tried separately and in 2019 was convicted, receiving a 25-year prison sentence. Ryan Duke's trial began in May 2022, more than 15 years after Grinstead's disappearance. During the proceedings, Duke recanted his 2017 confession, asserting that he had been coerced and under the influence of drugs when he made it. He claimed Bo Dukes was the true perpetrator of the murder and that he had only helped dispose of Grinstead's body out of fear. This dramatic shift complicated the prosecution's case.
Compared to what you were acquitted on, Mr. Duke, this charge of concealing the death of another is minimal, no question about it. You had a great defense in the case. And that is what it is. And you should be punished accordingly. Not for murder, not for burglary, not for aggravated assault. Because that's the way the system.
The jury ultimately found Duke not guilty of the most severe charges, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and burglary. However, they convicted him of concealing a death.
Was love their friend, love their stepdaughter. That's all they did, their sister. And that cannot be minimized or forgotten. You know, whether the system works for some, doesn't work for some, it works for everybody. It doesn't get the system doesn't guarantee any result. The system seeks justice every day. And those jurors worked hard on your case, and they decided what was justice. And that's what it is in this case. And it's up to me to impose an appropriate sentence. And that sentence is 10 years to serve in the state penitentiary. You're right. The parole board may pardon him out today. Maybe that's the case.
During sentencing in June 2022, the judge acknowledged his remorse but also emphasized the impact of his actions. Duke was sentenced to the maximum penalty for this charge, 10 years in prison. Having already served approximately 5 years in jail awaiting trial, Duke became eligible for parole soon after his sentencing. In August 2018, a devastating accident unfolded in Detroit when Charlessia Pelt made the fateful decision to drive under the influence. She was traveling eastbound on East 7 Mile Road in the wrong direction when she ran a red light at the intersection with Hayes Street and collided with another vehicle. Tragically, her son, Michael Jones, was injured. Michael's injuries proved to be fatal. Witnesses reported that Pelt was speeding into oncoming traffic and was on her cell phone at the time. Following the crash, Pelt was charged with operating while intoxicated, causing death and second-degree child abuse. The investigation revealed that her blood alcohol concentration was between 0.20 and 0.24, more than twice the legal limit. The incident left the community and both families devastated.
2016, Ms. Pelt had an accident on Linwood and Davidson, where she called me to the scene. Wrecked the vehicle. Who knows who was injured in the vehicle that she hit, because that vehicle left the scene. But thank God her 2 babies wasn't in the car with her. My son was with me, and I'm sure her daughter was someplace safe. August 9th, I got a call from a stranger telling me that my son was in an accident. At the same time, the hospital called me and told me my son was fighting for his life. I didn't understand what was going on. Unbeknownst to myself, I know him, and I rode right into the scene of the accident. Get to the hospital to see my baby laid out with marks on his arms, on his face. When I threatened to take my son to Mrs. several times, she cried and told me that her baby mean the world to her. But she really showed that on the night, 2018. When she drove intoxicated 3 times the legal limit with all 3 of her kids in the car. I don't know what else to say to this point. I don't understand none of this. Ms. Pelt know what my son meant to me.
Jones' father took the stand. He shared that in 2016, Pelt was involved in a previous incident where she wrecked a vehicle. Fortunately, during that incident, her son and daughter were not in the car. On August 9th, 2018, tragedy struck when Pelt drove under the influence and caused a fatal crash. A stranger called Jones' father to inform him that his son had been in a serious accident. Shortly afterward, the hospital contacted him, revealing that Michael was fighting for his life. Confused and distraught, he rushed to the hospital where he saw his son gravely injured.
I want to apologize to my family. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I promise I didn't mean it. Y'all know I love my baby so much. I'm sorry, everything I've ever put y'all through. Everything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and it hurts so bad to even know that his dad is going through everything he's going through. But it hurts me so bad for people to act like I didn't love my baby. He was my everything. It hurts so bad not to wake up and my baby that I had every day not be around me. It hurts so bad that my daughter had to witness her brother in the middle of the street. And I feel like my daughter is going through so much, and it's like one-sided, like it's only one part, one family hurt. My family is hurt too. And I know I hurt them, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to the courts. I'm so sorry to everybody. I'm madly sorry to my daughters. I had to even get them put into this situation and not be with their mama. because that's all they knew. I tried everything in this world to be with my babies, to do everything right, and I feel like I'm getting treated like I did, and I know that was the most wrong thing ever a parent can do, but I did right before then. I tried. I called out. I asked him to help me. He wasn't there to help me when he asked for custody. It was like he was taunting me, and I lost my parents, so I don't want nobody taking my babies.
In February 2019, Pelt pleaded guilty to the charges, expressing remorse and acknowledging the severity of her actions. At her sentencing hearing in March 2019, she apologized tearfully to the court, her family, and Michael's father's family. She expressed profound regret for her actions, which led to the loss of her son and the pain caused to her loved ones.
And I'm willing to go along with that because you guys know more about the case than I do. The sentence will be 3 to 15 years in the State Department of Corrections on the OWI causing death, 3 to 10 years on the child abuse second degree. You have credit for 13 days. Those two sentences will run concurrently. They'll run at the same time. We'll mark your file medical so you can continue to get whatever medication that you're getting. So right now, if you'll have a seat in the box, we'll get you some appeal papers, and I do have to advise you that you do lose some appellate rights by pleading guilty that you would have gotten if you went to trial. So just so you understand that. So if you'll have a seat, we'll take care of everything. Thanks, Ms. Carson.
The court sentenced Pelt to 3 to 15 years in prison for operating while intoxicated causing death, and 3 to 10 years for second-degree child abuse. These sentences were to run concurrently. The judge emphasized the reckless and negligent nature of her actions, noting that the boy and girl in the vehicle were unrestrained and highlighting her extremely high blood alcohol level at the time of the crash. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.